You don't belong here." The words hissed across the polished conference table before Ashley could finish her sentence. They were not shouted but whispered with venom, cutting sharper than any insult that might have been spoken aloud. A ripple of laughter followed, low, deliberate, cruel. A half-dozen associates smirked behind their coffee cups, eyes sliding away as if they were busy, pretending the humiliation wasn't happening in plain sight. Ashley froze for a breath, her binder open before her. Dozens of pages filled with arguments, notes, citations she had worked on for nights without sleep. Her chest tightened, but she refused to let them see her flinch. Her eyes met theirs, calm, unblinking, refusing to yield. Still, the partner in charge brushed past her contribution as if she hadn't spoken at all, invisible. That was what they wanted her to be, unseen, unheard, erased. But Ashley Morgan refused to vanish. She gathered her papers slowly, carefully, each sheet sliding back into its place like armor. Then she stood, deliberate and composed. She would not give them the satisfaction of seeing her falter. Not here. Not now. Inside, however, a truth echoed like steel. They had no idea who she really was. The story of Ashley Morgan did not begin in that meeting, but it was the moment the battle lines were drawn. Weeks earlier, she had walked into the firm's skyscraper with the weight of history and hope pressed firmly on her shoulders. The glass towers gleamed like monuments to ambition. Inside, every corridor hummed with footsteps chasing prestige, every wall carrying the residue of power. Ashley entered not as a legacy hire, not as a daughter of privilege, though she could have been both. She was the daughter of Daniel Morgan, the firm's founding partner and one of the most formidable lawyers in the country. Yet no one in those marble halls knew. It was Ashley's choice. "If I succeed," she had told her father, "it must be on my own merit. Not your shadow, not your name." Daniel, who had built the firm with sheer will and brilliance, had argued, at first. But when he saw the fire in her eyes, a fire that mirrored his own, he relented. And so Ashley began her journey stripped of the protection that could have sheltered her. She had expected the road to be difficult. What she had not expected was the hostility that clung to her like smoke. The glances, the whispered doubts, the quiet but constant undertone of, "You don't belong." The firm's corridors had always thrived on competition, but for Ashley, the air grew heavier with every passing week. What began as whispers turned into exclusion. Assignments vanished from her desk without explanation. Client dinners she had prepared strategy for were suddenly reassigned. Victories that bore her fingerprints were claimed by others. And when mistakes occurred, no matter how small, they somehow found their way to her file. The cruelty was never loud, never enough to be written down. But it was constant, corrosive, like drops of acid wearing down stone. Ashley endured in silence, not because she was weak, but because she was patient. She had learned early that in spaces designed to exclude you, reacting too soon was exactly what they wanted. She remembered her grandmother's voice. "Keep your dignity. Let them show who they are." But silence did not mean inaction. Ashley kept records. She saved emails that showed her work erased. She noted meetings where her voice was cut off. She marked each moment when Colin, smug, charming to partners, venomous to anyone beneath him, presented her ideas as his own. Each theft burned, but she said nothing. Instead, she documented, the storm was building. One autumn afternoon, as shadows stretched across the city, the firm prepared for its defining case of the year, a corporation accused of environmental negligence. Millions in billable hours hung in the balance. The partners gathered their brightest associates. Names were read. Ashley's wasn't among them. The reason floated in whispers, coded in language. Everyone understood. She's not client-friendly. Ashley heard it. Everyone knew what it meant. It was not her skill they doubted. It was her skin. That night, sitting in her apartment with the city lights flickering outside, Ashley opened, her binder filled with research she had done on the case despite not being chosen. For a brief moment, the thought of walking away crept into her mind, but only for a moment. She closed the binder, leaned back, and steadied herself. Walking away would mean surrender, and surrender was not in her blood. The next morning she arrived, earlier than ever. The office was quiet, the halls empty. She placed her binder directly on the lead partner's desk. No note, no explanation. Just the work, airtight, undeniable. Hours later, when the team convened, Ashley was not in the room, but her work was. The partner praised the strategy, oblivious to its author. Colin, usually smug, sat stunned, realizing he had brought nothing. Nearly as strong, Ashley knew they would not give her credit. Not yet. But she also knew something else. Truth has a way of rising, and once it does, it cannot be buried. The tension in the firm shifted. The whispers grew louder, emboldened by leadership's silence. Snide remarks came openly now. In one meeting, Colin quipped, "Maybe Ashley should handle the diversity paperwork as it's what she's best suited for." Laughter rippled. Ashley sat still, her expression unreadable. But inside, the storm raged. That evening, as she left the office, she found her father waiting outside. Daniel Morgan rarely appeared without reason. Though Ashley had never revealed the weight she carried, a father's eyes could not be fooled. "You're quieter than you used to be," he said softly. Ashley forced a smile. "I'm fine, Dad. Just busy." Daniel studied her, then nodded. He didn't press. But as she walked away, she felt his gaze linger, heavy with both pride and worry. Weeks passed. The campaign against her escalated. One morning, she arrived to find her desk stripped bare. Her notes, binders, even her coffee mug were gone. A sticky note sat in their place. Wrong office. The humiliation was deliberate. Associates glanced as she stood frozen, then quickly looked away. Ashley inhaled slowly, collected herself, and found her belongings dumped in a supply closet. She returned to her desk, dignity intact. But something inside shifted. The patience that had carried her this far had reached its limit. She saw clearly now. These weren't careless slights. This was systemic, deliberate, designed to break her spirit, and silence would no longer protect her. The breaking point came in a boardroom. The firm was preparing for a high-stakes presentation. Colin, as usual, presented stolen work as his own. When the client asked a sharp question, Colin stumbled. He faltered, scrambling for words. Ashley spoke, calm, clear, precise. She laid out precedent, counter-argument, strategy with flawless confidence. The room went silent. The client leaned forward, impressed. The partner in charge cleared his throat, forced to acknowledge her brilliance. Ashley closed her binder gently. She hadn't embarrassed Colin. She had simply revealed the truth. It was the first crack in the wall. And cracks once formed spread quickly. That evening, Colin raged, whispering venom to anyone who would listen. "She's manipulative, always playing the victim. She's not one of us." Files disappeared from her desk. Coffee spilled across her notes. Rumors spread through offices she had never entered. It was no longer whispers. It was war. Ashley knew she could not fight it alone anymore. The moment came at the firm's annual gala, a night glittering with crystal chandeliers, where clients mingled with partners and reputations were sealed. Ashley was given menial tasks, deliberately excluded from the spotlight. She moved quietly, unnoticed, but she had been preparing. For months, she had gathered proof, not just of stolen work, but of misconduct. Emails where Colin bragged about cutting corners, notes where associates mocked clients, patterns of negligence, hidden under arrogance. She had everything, and she had chosen her moment. Daniel Morgan stood at the podium, his gray suit crisp, his voice commanding. He delivered his annual address, words steady and powerful. Applause filled the hall. Then the opposite lead partner began calling associates for recognition. Colin's name was announced. Smug, he stepped forward, ready to bask in stolen glory. Ashley's voice rang out from the back of the room. Those strategies weren't his. They were mine. The room froze. Heads turned. Colin faltered, his smile collapsing. Ashley stepped into the light, folder in hand. Calm, deliberate, undeniable. She laid out the truth. Stolen work, exclusion, misconduct. Each word slicing through the silence. And then, "If you doubt me, ask my father." Gasps rippled. Daniel turned. Shock flickered, then pride, then fury. The room erupted. Colin stammered, denying, unraveling. Clients frowned. Partners shifted nervously. Reputations cracked under the weight of truth. Daniel's voice thundered, "Enough!" The hall silenced. For months I've watched this firm, my firm, drift from the values it was built on. Dignity, integrity, justice. Tonight my daughter has exposed what I could not see. Murmurs spread. His daughter? Faces turned pale. Associates who mocked Ashley now realized the truth. The woman they tried to erase was not only brilliant, but Daniel Morgan's blood. But Ashley's next words cut even deeper. "I never wanted privilege. I never wanted his name to protect me. I wanted to prove myself. And I have. But no one, not me, not anyone, should have to endure what I endured to be seen." The room fell silent. Clients nodded. Partners shifted uncomfortably. Colin crumbled. Arrogance shattered. By the end of the night, decisions were made. Colin dismissed. Others who joined his campaign followed. The firm issued apologies, rewrote policies, installed safeguards. For the first time, accountability pierced the marble walls. Ashley did not rise because of her father's name. She rose because of her strength, her brilliance, her refusal to break. The revelation of her identity was not a shield, but a sword, a reminder that truth, once revealed, cannot be silenced. The following week, she stood in her father's office. Sunlight poured across shelves lined with victories. "I should have protected you," Daniel said quietly. Ashley shook her head. "You did. You gave me strength. You taught me to fight for myself." Daniel's eyes shone with pride. "I've won 1,000 cases. None will ever mean as much as this. Not because you're my daughter, but because you refused to let them define you." Ashley smiled softly. "I didn't need their permission to belong. I already did." Father and daughter stood together, not legend and legacy, but equals. Outside, skyscrapers gleamed in the winter sun. Inside, Ashley walked the halls with a presence no one could ignore. No whispers trailed her now, no shadows dimmed her light. She had entered determined to make her own way. She had endured fire, carried the weight, and transformed the place that tried to break her. For Ashley Morgan, the story was not about privilege or even victory. It was about resilience, about justice, about the undeniable truth that no matter how loudly the world says you don't belong, courage and dignity prove otherwise.